So now we're going to go to our answers for the recycling quiz. So I didn't talk that much about textiles with my myth here. So clearly that sock is in bad shape. And you know, if you want to mend a sock with a big hole in it, that's fantastic. That's what people used to do a long time ago. They used to all mend their clothing. Okay, great. I don't know, the hole's pretty big, so most of us are probably not really going to do that. We probably think a lot of people think you need to throw it in the trash, and that used to be the case, but you can recycle it. You can take it to Goodwill, or here in the Seattle area, we have Northwest Center, and those places, as long as any kind of textiles, right? Most clothing, shoes, sheets and towels, if it's in good condition, those places will resell it in their thrift stores. But if it's torn and stained and in bad shape, they can send it to places that will recycle it and make that fabric into something else. So you can actually put it, you might want to put a separate bag, right? The good clothes in one bag and the torn, damaged ones in a different bag to make it easier for those places. But that's a good option for that. Ah, yes, and here are our good old plastic bags. The cute cat, forget the cute cat. But anyway, and we talked about that. You can reuse them for lots of stuff. In fact, for speaking of the cat, for putting cat litter. Of course, maybe it's better to just avoid them to begin with. We've got some potential bills in Washington that will be supposedly banning these. A lot of areas don't allow them. But if you have them, reuse them for stuff as long as you can, and then put them all in a bigger plastic bag, take them to the grocery store, where they will hopefully be turned into plastic lumber or something like that. Another thing we have in Seattle, which is starting to expand into more neighborhoods, and it's something I mention in my upcoming book also, is Ridwell. So I don't know if you haven't heard of Ridwell. They provide at-home pickup of things like plastic bags, batteries, light bulbs, textiles, so you don't have to go off and find a place to drop those things off. There's a fee for that service, but it's not that high. Ah, yes. Here we go. Things that belong in the curbside recycling bins. We've got the milk bottles, right? Milk bottles, yes, this is good. This is good. This is good. Now that's assuming you rinse them out, right? If you've got a bunch of leftover, whatever you were drinking in that or in here, or this is full of water, not a good idea. So rinse them out, shake them dry the best you can. You don't need to go and use a blow dryer or anything, but for the most part, shake them dry, put them in. We talked about these things are going to go the same place as the grocery bags. And this thing, it's made out of probably the same kind of plastic as this water bottle, but most recycling is not going to take it because they can't identify it. These kind of trays can be made of a bunch of different kinds of plastics, and it's not easy for them to identify it and sort it. I've actually got a bag of some of these miscellaneous stuff in my house and trying to figure out if I can find a place to take it. And hey, Ridwell might be an option. Ah, yes, the pizza. Now in Seattle, most of us know that we're going to put the pizza box into the yard waste compost bin because it's plain paper that doesn't have plastic on it, and it's greasy. It's got food residue, so you don't recycle that paper with food residue. When I very first moved to Seattle and we hadn't set up our kitchen, and my sister-in-law came over with pizza, which was great. I really appreciated it. Anyway, and then afterwards she said it goes in the yard waste. And I looked at her like, what? It goes in the yard waste, really? Because where I had lived before, we didn't have that. So it depends on where you are. If they can't take it in your yard waste and it's contaminated with pizza, then I guess the trash is it. But hey, if the lids are clean, maybe you could recycle those. Ah, here are these compostable cups, right? They say eco, and honestly, I wish we had better labeling, because sometimes you feel like you have to like look really carefully at a cup to see exactly what it's made of. And as far as the dirt, yeah, it kind of depends on what's in here, right? If it's just sand and some paper, you can put that in compost. If it's some other kind of dirt, like if there were old chewing gum or who knows what in there, then it might need to go in the trash, but not in recycling. Metal food cans. Most people are aware that those are recyclable, but again, clean them out, especially if they were greasy, right? Some of these foods here look like they might have oil with them, right? If it's like, you know, sardines in oil or tuna in oil or whatnot, a bit of soap, some water, rinse it, dry it, shake it out, and put it in the recycling. A lot of places are particular about lids. Usually it's best if they're attached onto the container. Tiny lids, they get lost in with all the various different recyclables and sometimes end up in the wrong place. So if you have small, tiny lids that can't be crimped, because that's another option, you can crimp them into a container and you just push it through and then push it closed, and then you can get the lid inside there so it's secure and it can go off to the metal recycling and not get accidentally mixed amongst the paper and glass and other things. Oh yes, paper towels and napkins. Those can go in compost. Now, unless they're contaminated with cleanser, in which case they should be thrown away. So maybe this wasn't the best picture to choose. But if they've got food on them, they go into the compost yard waste, assuming you have that option available to you. And of course, you can always go with reusable cloth instead of paper towels. Ah, yes, the phones and e-waste. So ideally, we try to keep our electronics for a longer period of time and then make sure that they're disposed of responsibly, rather than just kind of collecting loads and loads of them in our house, or definitely not putting them in the trash. And I'm pretty sure that everybody in the Seattle area knows that you don't throw these things away, but only about half the states in the US have e-waste collection and regulations. So some places people might be throwing these things away. Yeah, and then there are places you can take them and you can get credit if yours, depending on how old yours is. I mean, mine, they're so old that they're not really worth anything, but you can still take it to, here, this one's an Apple product. You could take it to the Apple store when you buy a new phone. You could take it to your provider, your Verizon or T-Mobile or what have you. And as I said, they'll either give you credit or they will take it to an e-waste recycler for you. The curbside recycling bin. Okay, yes, for the mail, including even those little envelope, those plasticky envelope parts, because the process will take care of those. So the mail is generally good to toss into the recycling. Same thing with this cardboard box. It kind of depends. If it's lined with plastic on the inside, like plastic bubble wrap, then you don't want to recycle it. If you're sure it's completely just paper, then you can. Receipts are often coated with BPS, which is a type of plastic. It's the same kind of, it's an additive actually, that was in those hard plastic water bottles, and it got taken out of baby bottles some years ago. Anyway, you don't want to put that into recycling, so those shiny receipts generally need to go in the trash. Now, you can, of course, ask for email receipts instead, and then you don't have to have these. Paper cups, it depends. Some places will take them if they can process it, but they do have kind of a plastic lining in them to keep the hot liquid inside the cup and not leaking out. So those may or may not be recyclable. The rules seem to keep changing. And as far as the lid also is plastic, so, excuse me, you probably need to throw out the lid separately. Yes. Usually most people don't have this many bottles of wine at once, but that's the picture I found. Here in Washington, we do have a glass processing facility, although I've heard stories of places not wanting to recycle glass as much. If glass recycling is available, again, it's rinse out the bottle, get rid of excess moisture, and recycle it. But there's a lot of places where glass recycling is not available. And a lot of that is because of contamination.